Hello viewers. The topic of our discussion today is approaches to development communication, in which we will see how the concept of development communication has evolved over a period of time, from development communication to development support communication to more recent debates of social and behavioral change communication. You would have gone through the theories of development in Unit 5 of the course Media and Society, in which we had discussed a number of theories. All these theories have direct linkages with the concept of development communication, which we shall try to explore. If I put the whole discussion in a context, after the Second World War, development was defined in terms of economic growth. Around this time, a number of Asian, African and Latin American countries were getting freedom from colonization and they were seeking the path of development. American economist Walt Rostow, in his seminal work, emphasized gross national product, industrial growth and urbanization as key measures for progress. His theory was based on the capitalist nature of developing countries, which was one-way flow of development from government to people, experts to people. He defined 5 stages of growth, which were the same for all the countries. He was of the view that when the leading sectors of industry were advanced, their advantages would trickle down to the lagging sectors of economy. And thus this theory was also known as the trickle-down theory. There was focus of transforming the traditional societies into the modern and Western societies. The first major research in communication and development was conducted by political scientist Daniel Lerner, who in his path-breaking work, The Passing of a Traditional Society, placed great emphasis on the role of mass media in modernizing developing countries. In this theory, he talked about urbanization, literacy, mass media exposure and political participation as change agent. In this view, development was primarily viewed as a matter of increasing productivity, and to increase productivity, one must aspire, which begins from the psyche of an individual. Lerner talked about empathy and psychic spark of mass media. Empathy is a feeling of oneness which endows a person with the capacity to aspire for modernization and better things in life. And his concept of psychic spark of mass media was related to the change in irrational psychological attitudes of traditional societies. Lerner also saw a relationship between economic productivity and media provisions in different countries. He supported his theory by saying that the richest country has the most maximum mass media in terms of more newspapers and radio, while poor countries had the least. US communication researcher and teacher Wilbur Schramm was greatly influenced by Lerner. He also found great potential and promises mass media. His book, Mass Media and National Development, is considered a blueprint on development communication, in which he termed media as magic multipliers. In this concept, media had the magical capacity to propagate ideas of social change. Schramm said the underdevelopment countries could optimally utilize media for modernization of industry, agriculture, health and literacy. And media can be optimally used to persuade people to shift to new customs and practices of a community. Around this time, American sociologist Everett Rogers conceived social change in terms of diffusion of innovation. He argued that adoption of modern scientific inventions and agriculture practices of the West can be applied in the less developed countries, in which media can play a very useful role in generating evidence about an innovation. The diffusion researchers based their ideas on 3 major elements: the target population of the innovation itself to be transmitted, and the various sources of communication channels. They were of the view that the third world countries were composed of traditional personalities, whereas industrialized societies contained more innovative personalities. And for achieving development, the traditional societies need to catch up, repeating the process that the industrialized countries went through a century ago. This concept did not consider the internal hierarchies and structures of domination in the developing countries. So this amounted to a whole lot of criticism of the diffusion model and a lot of rethinking. All these concepts of direct change of mass media were criticized, and the major line of criticism was that these concepts were dominated by Western notions of development, and they had overemphasis on technological and economic aspects. In all these concepts, mass media were seen as direct forces of change for transmitting new ideas and practices from the developed countries to the developing world. And in these all communication models were rooted in the basic SMCR model, which was not adequate to the understanding of the complex process of development communication. Moreover, this model considered people as passive audiences who were ready to be influenced by messages they received. And in this, underdevelopment was seen as some kind of economic, social and psychological shortcoming among the developing countries, which was not true, because this model ignored two important forces, the external forces and the internal forces. The external forces were the colonization and imperialism as factors in development of the rich countries and underdevelopment of the poor. Similarly, the internal forces were the local culture, the inequalities, the traditional wisdom, which was not taken into account. Because traditional societies are not monoliths, they have a lot of variation among themselves, and the cultural practices, the inequalities in terms of class, caste, gender and many aspects were ignored in this concept. And there was a total silence on human rights, environment, personal freedom and democratic participation. Because of all this criticism, the dominant paradigm of development failed, which led to a whole lot of rethinking and debate. To their credit, Schramm and Rogers, they revised their model, they revised their theory, and they argued in the revised model. Schramm said that the information must flow not only to them but also from people, so that their needs can be known and they might practice in the acts of nation building. Rogers gave emphasis on greater equality, freedom and similar other valued qualities for people through gaining greater control over their environment. So the focus of change was on consideration of the basic needs. Rogers also went on to say that mass media exposure among the nation's citizens creates a favorable climate. You can notice the shift from direct power of mass media to creating a climate or to support a specific development program or a project. So all these factors led to a shift in the focus of development communication, which was shifted to co-equal, little media centered, government with people communication. There was increased emphasis on horizontal two-way communication between authorities and audience. It considered audience as active participant in the development process. It emphasized the importance of feedback from different stakeholders. There was focus on motivating community to participate and evolve their own development strategies. Communication process was seen as a two-step flow in which the role of opinion leaders came into focus. This discussion led to a better standing of the role of communication for development, which is known as C4D. There was a lot of deliberations were going on at the global level, in which the World Congress on Communication for Development 2006 defined communication for development, in which the focus was also on listening, building trust, sharing knowledge and skills, building policies, debating and learning for sustainable, meaningful change. It also said that to accept a new practice or alter an old practice if the policy and legal framework, economic and social cultural factors all provide a conducive environment. Social and behavior change communication is an improvised and theory-based proposition of C4D. It takes into account the normative and structural equalities. It is based on the premise that individuals and social change depends on larger structural systems and norms, and it goes beyond the delivery of messages and encompasses full range of ways in which people individually and collectively change behavior on a large scale. So you will find that the focus here is on large scale. This kind of communication is more inclusive, it is bottom up, and participatory in nature, it also works at multiple levels of system in which the individual, family, community and the political environment is also involved. Social and behavioral change communication involves strategic, systematic and targeted communication approach. Let us try to understand what these concepts mean. SBCC or social or behavioral change communication is strategic. This means that communication process is designed using a structured communication plan which has very clear-cut objectives. These objectives have to be achievable, measurable and specific. It also should have indicators and targets. It should have a distribution plan as well as a follow-up, so that the process of communication gets completed. SBCC is research based. When I say research based, I mean that research starts from the design stage itself, in which the need assessment of the target audience is undertaken, in which their hopes and aspirations are taken into account, regular monitoring of the project is undertaken, feedback obtained, and towards the end of the project, evaluation is undertaken. So this is how research constitutes an integral part of the SBCC communication. It is grounded in theory. Apart from behavioral change theories and communication theories, it also applies consumer behavior theories, and the evidence leads to further development of theories. It is collaborative in nature because it involves multiple stakeholders and community groups. It involves the political leadership, it involves decision makers, subject experts, people at large and community. So this is how the collaborative nature of the communication contributes in participatory communication. It also makes use of multiple media channels and integrates both modern and traditional systems. Let us look at these channels of communication. Print, radio, television have always been used for reaching out to the large, wide spread audiences. But these are one-way, largely one-way mode of communication, and to overcome this limitation, interactive radio and video are used. Increasingly, ICTs are being used, new media, social media, community media, very important, community radio, community video, these are being used. If you recall, during the 80s, posters, flip charts, leaflets, such publicity material which was one-way mode of communication was displayed at centers, which were more in terms of how people should behave. Now in this revised scheme of things, small media is only a part of the entire communication package. It also makes use of interpersonal communication in a big way through community participation. It also makes use of various innovative approaches. For example, social marketing, enter-educate communication, advocacy, social mobilization and so on. Social marketing is a use of commercial marketing techniques to promote pro-social behavior and socially beneficial practices. Enter-educate communication. It has been found that entertainment in the form of game activities, group interaction and use of media material enables better recall and acceptance among people. Advocacy helps to garner support and implement action on positive policies and issues of sustainability of the project. We have already said that a number of stakeholders are involved in social and behavioral change communication. So advocacy helps at various levels. Similarly, social mobilization. It is conducted through various community level activities, group discussions, debates and consultation with the stakeholders. So we can see the focus of SBCC has shifted from needs to rights, from individual and households to communities and wider society, from beneficiaries to partners in social development, from top-down channels to participatory and more dialogical learning models. It's from demanding creation to participation and empowerment. Let me summarize the whole discussion about SBCC, that it aims to create awareness about the fundamental rights and ways to achieve them. It builds new skills and capacities to enable the people to identify, prioritize and resolve their own problems. It increases people's participation in development activities and helps to raise their aspiration. There is a stress on self-reliance and independence. It nurtures relationships between different stakeholders because there are so many people involved in the whole process. It enables people to cultivate their capabilities in harmony with the environment, and the entire process is aimed to empower these groups and communities so that they are able to improve their quality of life. So you would have seen with the entire discussion that the concept of development communication has evolved from simple one-way linear top-down communication process to more participatory, inclusive and bottom-up approach communication. It involves a large number of stakeholders into account. The focus is on self-reliance so that people are able to empower themselves and involve themselves in their decision making. I hope you will find the discussion useful and it will enable you to understand how the various shifts in the concept of development communication to development support communication to communication for development and finally social and behavioral change communication. Thank you.